So, John Locke, the essay concerning human understanding, probably one of the toughest books I've read. Was not able to get out of it exactly what I was hoping to get out of it, and took a lot of time to get there. I think John Locke does a great job of debunking the idea that the human soul has this innate or imprint that come from God or come from previous existence. Not real sure exactly where that came from, but that idea that they had that the soul had this imprint and that it could be recalled at the time of someone's at the point of reasoning. And so he goes on to explain that our ideas, the things that we think of, the things that we know, or things we think to be true, come from two things: from sensations, our senses, and reflection, which is basically the way we take something and we think about it. So we feel something and we start thinking about it, and therefore we form an idea. We hear something, we think about it, and then we form an idea. And so you have this process, and through this process, we gain our ideas, our our notions of what something really is or how it exists, and it all works through perception. I'm gonna get into that in just a second. So, as I was reading this book, I felt like he done a great job, and he actually put the reason why he was writing this book in chapter 11 of book 2, verse 15. It says, "These are the beginning of human knowledge, and thus I have given a short, and I think true history of the first beginnings of human knowledge, whence the mind has its first objects, and by what steps it makes its progress to the laying in and storing up of those ideas, out of which is to be framed all the knowledge it is capable of, wherein I must appeal to the experience and observation whether I am in the right, the best way to come to truth being to examine things as they really are, and not to conclude they are as we fancy ourselves or have been taught by others to imagine." And so he goes on to say, hey, that's what I was doing. I want y'all to be able to look it up for yourself, be able to experience it, know it's true. I will say this. As I was reading this text, our course here, chapter 8 of book 2, very difficult book for me. I read it over and over and over again and couldn't necessarily get what I was wanting to get out of it. And as he starts talking about primary and secondary qualities, I guess because of our ability to perceive something, it's hard for me in any of those primary qualities to say, yes, yeah, I know that something that exists must have matter. There must be some kind of matter to make it exist. I get that. I understand that part, but we still perceive matter. Matter's a perceived word that we come up with, and so I ain't going in depth of whether. Kind of goes back to the Descartes thing of whether we exist or not, and so you go to the very simplest truth and you work your way up from there to get the truth that actually what we actually know, and then we build on it to get an idea. And so I feel like this is kind of a very similar principle. I feel like in chapter 8 was he talked about those secondary principles, the way that we look at something. Perception in our society, perception seems to be the truth. However, a lot of times perception is absolutely the opposite of our truth. It's absolutely the opposite of what's really real. I mean, I look at people when we read God's word. I look at people when I talk to them. I work in sales, and so I talk to people all the time, and what they perceive about a person. I'm in the car business. People perceive car salesmen to be rotten people. I've always done things the right way, and so their perception of me is something I have to overcome every time I go out and shake my hand and say, hello, my name's Michael Roach. And so perception can be a dangerous thing, and so we have to be careful when we start perceiving items. And when we look at chapter 8 there, and he starts doing the experiments, and he talks about the secondary qualities versus the primary qualities, there's a lot of confusion for me. Again, even the things like matter. I know that something that exists got to have matter. I know that there's a texture to it. I know that there's a movement to it. I know there's something about that thing that makes it a thing more than our perception. If we were blind, if we had all of our sensors removed, that thing could still exist without me knowing it exists. Within reason. Again, we think about our dreams and stuff like that. We'll go down that road. But anyway, with that being said, chapter 8 is a difficult chapter for me, and I think that's where both of my questions are going to come from. Do you see a point in chapter 8 in book 2, or just an influx of ideas and experiments? The other question I have, after reading chapter 8, can we truly know something, or do we still live within the realm of our perception. So can we know that something truly exists? Or are we still perceiving everything that we know to be true or real? And I know that's a crazy question, but when you read this chapter, even matter that's out there, we only know it exists because we've seen it, or we've touched it, or we've heard about it. We can't say that it exists without using our perception. Somebody has to perceive it. It goes back to Schrodinger's cat. The cat's either alive or dead. He's in the box. We can't know. So at that point, he's both alive and dead, you know? Anyway, thank y'all so much.